Well, we're here with my longtime friend and incredible musician, composer, conductor, David Eaton. And David is on the board of our parent company of Peace Stars. So I'm so happy to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity to share.
I want to introduce you a little bit to our listeners. Maybe you can start by giving a little bit of your background, how you got into music, and what kinds of things you've done with what you've learned.
Okay, I grew up in a large Catholic family, went to Catholic elementary school, and I was very fortunate because in that school there was a very, very fine music program.
Aha.
Okay. And some of my friends were musicians in the band and the orchestra. So, but then my father, he was a professional electrical engineer.
Hmm.
And in the 1950s, he built us for our family a stereo, the equivalent of what we now call a stereo, with a turntable and speakers. And he really loved the big band music, Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman. And so that was my first exposure to music was through my dad and
Hmm.
then at school. And I really liked the bands of Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey, and they were trombone players. So my first instrument was trombone,
Aha.
and I did very well in trombone. I was playing in our high school band and orchestra, and then in uh, I actually got a music scholarship to Ohio State because I played the horn so well.
Wow.
But even when I was in high school, I started composing. And in our high school, we had a very fine music program also with a music theory class, music history. So I began to really get into music more deeply in that environment. And then when I was a sophomore in high school, the Cleveland Orchestra, I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland, one of the really world's great orchestras came to our high school and performed. And when I heard this orchestra, 100 people just playing so flawlessly together, like one unit of this amazing music, it was Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony. I was
Wow.
just blown away. I said, I want to do that. And so, and I was involved in sports at the time, and I was thinking about a career in sports, but music won out. And like I said, I was able to go to music school, majored in music, and with the intent of getting a degree in composition and music theory. But then I was also, this was late 60s, early 70s. I was also very much into rock music, the
Aha.
Beatles and, the Stones and, the music that my generation grew up, the Woodstock generation grew up on. And so I played in a couple rock bands at the time also to help work my way through school.
Trombone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there were two really great horn bands that emerged,
Yeah, they were.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and
And
Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah.
Right. They had these great horn sections. So all of a sudden I was in demand, you know.
Yeah.
So for several years I played in a couple of bands, did very well, but continued my education. And then in 1975 I came to New York. I had a good friend, a high school friend, who was a very fine trumpet player who was playing in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. And he said, Dave, you got to come to New York. You'll do well here. You can. So I went to New York in 75 and started working in New York, did some conducting, arranging, things like that. I wouldn't say I've had a major career, but I've had a career in music and conducting and composing and arranging. And I've conducted concerts, of course, in New York, at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, the Apollo Theater, the UN. I just did a concert 2 weeks ago with a small chamber orchestra at the United Nations. I've also conducted overseas in Paris, Vienna, Moscow, Ukraine, London, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and Hanoi, of all places. I had no idea Hanoi has a beautiful opera house that the French built there in 1911. And through various interesting set of circumstances, I found myself conducting in Hanoi. So I've been very active as a arranger, composer, conductor, I'm teaching now. I'm semi-retired, but I am teaching general music studies at two different places. And we just last night I participated in a Black History Month concert.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and we did several pieces celebrating the Black artists and musicians of our culture. So I'm still involved in music, writing, arranging all the time. So I've been
Wow.
very blessed in that regard.
Can you describe the arrangement of the New York City Symphony that you're director of? How many people are involved and what kind of stuff you do there?
The City Symphony Orchestra of New York is a professional orchestra. It was founded 100 years ago this year in
Yes.
1926.
Uh-huh.
It was an amateur orchestra for many years, but in 1956 it became incorporated as a 501c3 in the state of New York. And in the early 1970s, there was a transfer of the patronage and the board of directors, and I became involved with the orchestra at that time. I played in the
Nice.
orchestra for a time, and I became the conductor. I was actually appointed to be the music director in 1985.
Wow.
And the orchestra it's a freelance orchestra in New York City,
Hmm.
and we hire union musicians. It's union orchestra. I've been in the musicians union for many, many, many years. And we've done concerts at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this concert I did last week at the UN was the seventh time I've had members of the orchestra at the UN to
Amazing.
celebrate various events. 10 years ago, we did a big concert at the UN to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the UN.
Okay.
And we had a 50-piece orchestra, and a number of different artists from all over the world were with us, including Kimani Marley, who was, Bob Marley's son.
Wow.
And he was on the program. And when he found out an orchestra was going to be there, he said, "Can I sing with the orchestra?" So I did an arrangement of one of his pieces and he sang with us. It was great.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Uh, so one thing that really attracted me to you a lot is your commitment to and work in the area of peace. That's something that I know is near and dear to your heart. Can you talk about some of the musical works that you've done specifically to promote peace and to promote reconciliation?
sure. I guess one of perhaps the most significant bit of work I've done. I had the opportunity between 2003 and 2012 to
Uh-huh.
travel to Israel on a number of occasions to participate and produce events relating to interfaith work, interfaith cooperation. And one of my trips there, I met a very well known, highly regarded Israeli singer by the name of David Dior.
Uh-huh.
And I really didn't know who David was, but I found out very quickly that he was a big deal in Israel and had done concerts with the Israel Philharmonic, and he had his own band. And he was both a classical artist, he's a high tenor, or what we call a countertenor, but also he sings with his own band and very popular. We did a concert where we invited David to participate, and he himself had been doing interfaith work through music.
Uh-huh.
As an Israeli, he performed with Palestinians and Arabs and Christians. And I found out in Israel there were dance companies and choirs and that where Christians, Muslims, and Jews were working together all the time.
Yep.
And we have this idea that there's so much like division and bifurcation when in fact that's the political world, but in the artistic world it wasn't necessarily the case. And so we did a concert. We invited David to sing. He sang with an orchestra. He had just recorded an album with the Israel Philharmonic. And then 2 or 3 weeks after that concert, he contacted me. He sent me an email and said, "I'd like to work together with you. Let's do something together for peace, interfaith, right?"
Uh-huh.
So we embarked on a large scale composition project. We created together a 10 movement cantata for peace
Wow.
called Hallelujah Songs of David. And we recorded a CD in Tel Aviv of the music. And then after we recorded the CD, David sent the CD to many of his friends in the diplomatic community in Europe. And they started inviting us to come and perform this music with various orchestras, especially in Eastern Europe.
Amazing.
And David got all these things paid for. The orchestra, the chorus. We had a big chorus, and I have some video of the world premiere. I can send you the link to that. But David is really committed to using his talent for peace and to bring harmony and use music as the way to build bridges, which is something I had always been doing and trying to do throughout my life. So we this music had, as I mentioned, we performed it in Europe a couple of times. We did two actually excerpts of the music at the United Nations. It's been performed, as mentioned, in Hanoi. I did part of this in Taiwan. We did some of it in New York. We were in Cyprus. I did an excerpt of the music in Vienna with a chamber orchestra in Vienna. So but the motivation was to use music as a way to, again, to build bridges and to bring people together in the spirit of harmony and unity. And uh, in my experiences, I've seen how beauty, right, whether it's the beauty of art or the beauty of nature, can be transformational, right?
Absolutely.
And that was actually the theme of that UN concert 10 years ago. It was called The Transformative Power of Music. That was the UN's theme at the time. And I have some nice photos from that event. I can send you the photos also. But we had artists from all over the world, from Latin America, Africa, Europe, Asia, sing with the orchestra on that concert. And they all enjoyed so much playing or singing with an orchestra, right? They didn't consider it somehow, well, in certain spheres, I should say, there's a feeling that classical music is the music of the white oppressor or something like that. you know, but all these artists, no matter where they were from, when they heard, "Hey, we have an orchestra, can I sing with the
Yeah.
orchestra?"
Uh,
For them, it was a great opportunity, and I was happy to do the music with them.
and a transformative experience
That's
to
right.
be part of
That's
that.
right. To transcend the thing that might normally be barriers for many people, right?
I hope when it comes time to do our first musical competition that you and also David would consider being on our judge panel
Yeah.
with that experience. Before we talk about some of the things you're working on right now, I just want to build on what you were saying in terms of the transformational power of music. I think music can change our level of vibration and our level of resonance so we can get beyond our little perspective and what we think about each other and actually get to a higher place where we can all unite and connect in heart. Maybe you can talk about that, briefly. I know you've done so much work, especially with young people in music.
But I spent, as you may know, I recently spent 8 years as an artist in residence
Wow.
at a music academy in South Korea,
Amazing.
and we formed a youth orchestra.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we started with very young kids, like kids who were like in the third, fourth, and fifth grade. But over time, they developed very well, and then we were doing concerts in all throughout the city, right?
Amazing.
And we were doing some classical music, of course. We did some pop music and folk music, but it was a chance for these children to have a real meaningful experience with music, and it was very interesting to see how they responded when the audience responded to them, right? Like it was very new. Like they had no idea that they had this kind of power to move people. And when they saw the response of the audience to their music making, it was so gratifying to them. They became, oh wow, like there was like they became very proud of their efforts, and we can do more of this, right? We also did seven songwriting competitions where we uh, solicited songs from songwriters around the world to write songs again about peace, about love, about family of man working together, and we received beautiful songs in multiple styles: rock, jazz, rap, classical. New Age by composers from around the world who felt compelled to write about these issues and use their talent for the sake of promoting peace and goodwill, which again points to the power of music to help us build harmonious relationships.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this about me, but each morning, I do journaling, right? Where
Okay.
I connect to God and share my thoughts and get insights. But lately I've been setting aside time before I do that to to sing several songs, songs that move my heart and lift up
Okay.
my heart. And I've noticed such a difference in the quality of my journaling when I've started to do that. It's really music is so powerful. It just can connect us to very higher vibration, I think. So I really appreciate that. Um,
Unfortunately, I'm not a very good singer. I
well, trombones count.
that's why I have to get other people to sing my songs, you know.
There you go. Um, I know you're working on or working. You've just recently published a book, and I understand you published another CD of works right now. Can you just share briefly about that?
Oh, sure. The book is called What Music Tells Me:
Uh-huh.
Beauty, Truth, and Goodness and Our Cultural Inheritance.
Uh-huh.
It's a print edition, but also a Kindle edition.
Uh-huh.
And going back, gosh, 40 years, the mid 1980s, I wrote a number of articles for various periodicals and journals about music, about these themes we're talking about.
Sure.
And in 2009, I realized I had maybe 25 or 30 essays of on various topics about music, about culture, about how music interfaces with society, politically, socially, culturally, religiously. Um, so I thought, well, maybe I should publish this. So I started getting into it, editing the essays, and also doing more research into the various topics I wanted to write about. And I spent 13 years putting it all together. But it's a self-published book
So you rushed
on,
it. Right?
but the very opening of the book, the preface, I quote Leonard Bernstein,
Uh-huh.
the great American composer, conductor. And this was from an interview, I think from the 1970s he did for the LA Times. And he said, art cannot change events, but it can change people. It can affect people so they are changed because people are changed by art, enriched, ennobled, encouraged. They can act in a way that may affect the course of events by the way they vote, by the way they behave, and the way they think. So, and that in a nutshell, I mean, I could have stopped right there, but that in a nutshell is speaks to the power of art and music and beauty in general. I think Immanuel Kant and other philosophers, and even I do a chapter in my book on the Chinese philosophers, Confucius and Lu Bouvet and others. The cultures of antiquity, whether it was the Chinese or the Greeks or the Mesopotamians or the Hebrews thousands of years ago, they all shared a similar view about the transformative power of music.
Amazing. Well,
That all of them,
Leonard Bernstein wrote the preeminent musical about two two conflicting sides coming together.
right?
He's the father of this whole genre of trying to use music to bring two sides together.
That's right. And originally I found out, did some research on West Side Story.
Yeah.
Originally, the plot was going to be about not necessarily two gangs, rival gangs, based on ethnicity, but two people with different religions, one
Oh,
Jewish, one Christian.
interesting.
that was the original plot line. But then they changed it to make it more, I think, New York centered with about the gangs and that. But you're right. It was that movie was about somehow finding ways to overcome the barriers and difficulties, and music became obviously, and dance, of course, the great music of and dancing from that musical. So Bernstein was always a man of uh, consciousness when it came to this particular point, right? And in my research, like I said, uh, Confucius, and there was another Chinese politician, Lu Bouvet, who lived a couple of hundred years after Confucius. He said something that's often attributed to Confucius, but I did the research and it turned out it wasn't Confucius. But he said, if you wish to know the status of a particular province or sovereignty, if you wish to know if the leaders are good or bad, or the cultural virtues of a country are good or bad, the quality of its music will furnish the answer.
Very interesting.
Yes. And the Greeks also had a very strong opinion about this. Plato writes about uh, a, one of his fellow philosophers, Damon of Athens. And Damon of Athens was the first, one of the first, if not the first, Greek philosopher to study the effect of music on our psyche, right? We call that psychoacoustics in modern parlance, right? But Damon of Athens wrote a very interesting piece in which he said, if you change the songs of a nation, soon you will change the laws of the nation, which is very powerful. And when I thought about that, I immediately, for whatever reason, I flashed on the American comedian George Carlin.
Okay.
Because Carlin had a comedy routine called The Seven Dirty Words You Can't Say on Television, right? And there was a time not long ago where if you use those words on television or radio, you might be held accountable by the FCC, right? The Federal Communications Commission. You might get fined. You might have your program canceled. But now we hear those words all the time, right? Why? They've
Badly.
become norm. They've become normalized
Yes.
in music and the cinema.
Ah, ah.
Ah, so
So
Damon
for
was
good or
right.
for bad, music is very powerful.
Right, exactly right. So
Yes.
that, which points to the goodness aspect. You know, we talked about beauty, truth, and goodness. The goodness aspect is dealing with morality, or what in philosophical terms, axiology or values. What do we value as individuals and as a society and as artists, right? So this is the paradigm of beauty, which is aesthetics, truth, which is about technique and organization, but the goodness aspect deals with the moral aspect and how, like Bernstein said, how we behave,
Yeah.
right?
There you go.
Which is a big deal.
There you go.
Yeah.
Before we finish, tell me briefly about your CD that you just finished.
Oh yeah, I just released my 10th album
Okay.
of original songs. These are songs I wrote during my stay in Korea, 12 songs, kind of some pop, some semi-classical, some new age. Um, Performed and recorded by a great young singer I've been working with, Rebecca Zinke from California.
Uh-huh.
Rebecca's a terrific singer. She recorded the tunes for me, and I realized I had this nice collection of tunes that she did, and so we put them together and we just released it. You know, you can find it now on uh, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify. It's out there. You know,
What's the name of the CD?
well, it's called "Some of My Music, Volume 10."
All right. We'll have to get you back here for volume 20. That's
You know, I'll do it.
all right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know you're such a busy guy, but I appreciate you taking the time, and I really appreciate your helping with Peace Stars.
Sure.
We have so much vision and hope, and I'm really comfortable that this is going to move forward. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. And let's go with Peace Stars. My motto is more music, less talk, but I did a lot of talking today.
There you go. All right. Well, be well. Best to your family. Take care.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Stay warm.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.